Our culture is obsessed with love. What would the music industry be without love songs, for example? And what about novels and movies? There are only a very few that do not revolve around either romantic or familial love. Today's gospel is about love too, but not in a form we're used to. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. Let me tell you, these are not words that will likely ever appear on a Hallmark card. That's because this isn't the understanding of love that our culture usually promotes. The popular view of love, what I think of as soft love, is seen as entirely a matter of warm feelings and mutual support and caring. It's viewed as the tender regard we have for those special persons in our life, the people who we know we can trust to always have our best interest in heart. So what then is Jesus talking about? What could it possibly mean to love your enemies? Are we to have warm, tender feelings for them? Confident that their mutual support, trusting that they have our best interests at heart? Obviously not. Clearly, Jesus has a very different view of love in mind. What could it be? What does a love that can love enemies even look like? One major cue comes in the verses that end this passage. Do not judge, and you will not be judged, it says. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. This is, first of all, then, a love, a strong love, that somehow always manages to take people for who and what they are, not for what we think they should be. It reminds me of something that I heard about some 25 years ago. This is the 1990s, at a time when the abortion debate was at its most heated and vitriolic. There's no question that many on each side of the issue considered those on the other side to be their enemies. Rage and hatred ran deep. Simply because of the depth of the bitterness and hard feelings, though, a small group of women in Chicago from both sides of the debate became concerned. They decided to do something different. They began to meet with the goal of sharing not their opinions, but rather their deepest feelings. They resolved to listen to each other with openness and without judgment. The result was transforming. Without actually shifting their positions, most of the group came to admit that deep down, their feelings were much more ambivalent than they usually let on. Many who were pro-choice acknowledged that much about abortion made them uncomfortable. They saw it as a last-ditch measure. Likewise, many of those who were pro-life shared that they actually did not feel good about putting a legal limit on a woman's choice at all. The result was that while each side largely kept their views intact, they formed bridges to each other as people. They had come to understand and even sympathize with why the others took the stance they did, doing this even as they continued to disagree with them. The result was a far more compassionate and respectful debate. Is something like this what Jesus meant by love? Is this the sort of strong love that makes it possible to love our enemies? I believe it is. Put succinctly, I believe that what Jesus means by love is this. It's the willingness to step inside another's meaning in order to view the person who holds it with compassion and without judgment, even while retaining your own meaning. Again, strong love is the willingness to step inside another's meaning in order to view the person who holds it with compassion and without judgment, even while retaining your own meaning. Love such as this may seem rare, but I don't think it is. I'd even go so far as to say that this is the foundation of all love. This willingness to step inside another's meaning with compassion and without judgment. Take this, for example. My best friend in high school was a guy named Warren. Ours was a strange relationship, a strange friendship. Warren was a jock, and I was not. Warren was on the football team. He was on the tennis team. He loved gym class. I, on the other hand, well, I read constantly. Not only did I not play any sports, but I hated gym class. I was a total klutz. I had only to pick up a baseball bat for strikes begin to add up one after the other. And a thrown pitch would avoid my bat as if repelled by a negative force. And as for footballs, well, they might have well have been smeared with grease, given how easily they slipped through my fingers. As a result, Warren was always on my case. He had a special word of contempt for me and all who were like me. I was a ballerina. I suppose I should have been grateful that he didn't choose a worse term. But even so, he managed to load the word with enough scorn to make up for all the lack of innate shock value. After striking out yet again, or dropping the ball yet again, Warren's lip would curl up into a sneer and he'd growl out, "Oh my gosh, Ernie, you are a ballerina." In his mouth was the ultimate insult. The thing is, the term was not reserved just for me either. He used it for anyone, male or female, who in his opinion did not measure up. It was his go-to put down for everyone. And it was always accompanied by the same sneer and dripping contempt. "Oh man, you are such a ballerina." After graduating from high school, I moved away. Warren stayed local. I never heard from him. I did remain curious about him, however. So when a 15th year reunion was organized, he was the person I most wanted to see. Not only he did appear. So I slipped out of the room in the local country club where the reunion was being held, looked up his number, and gave him a call. This was back in the days of phone books and pay phones. Warren gave some weak excuse for not showing up. When I pressed him, he finally admitted that he was actually avoiding his old friends. Apparently, his life after high school had not gone as well as he had hoped, and he was too embarrassed to see us. I didn't let him off the hook, though, and at last he agreed to get together. He didn't want to meet at his house. Instead, he said that his daughter had something at the school the next evening, and we could meet there. I met him in the lobby. I recognized him at once. He hadn't changed at all. With him was a little 6-year-old girl. Warren no sooner introduced her than she ran off to get ready for something. We stood in the lobby catching up the way people do who haven't seen each other for a while. He kept checking his watch, though, and finally he said that it was time to go. I asked him what we were going to see. You know, there are times when God seems to have a sense of humor. Either that or the irony of the situation is just so delicious as to make something inevitable. Either way, it was true. Warren's little daughter had developed an absolute passion for ballet. We were there to see her recital. We took our seats in the auditorium. Warren was visibly nervous. His eyes never left the stage, and by now he could talk about nothing but his little girl, how much she practiced, how much she loved to dance, how good she was. At last the curtain rose. Warren inhaled deeply and gripped the side of his seat. In what marched a line of little girls. "There she is," Warren said. His daughter was the second from the left. "Come on, honey," he mumbled under his breath. "You can do it." The girls danced and swirled and in various combinations, sometimes in groups, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone. Warren sat rigid and unmoving. He hardly seemed to breathe. Occasionally he muttered something under his breath. "Come on, sweetheart. You can do it. That's it." Some older girls came onto the stage. When they finished, Warren leaned over to me and said, "Here comes her solo." With that, his daughter was back. She moved about the stage with all the grace and poise that a 6-year-old can muster. "Just look at that," Warren said to me. "Isn't she great?" Just then, though, the little girl lost her balance. She stumbled and fell. Warren gasped. I had seen him at football games snarl with contempt when one of his teammates was creamed by a tackle. But now he squirmed in agony. "Come on, sweetheart," he whispered. "Get up. Come on. You can do it." And she did get up. A moment later, she was dancing again, as if nothing had happened. Warren simply beamed. "Did you see that?" he said after his daughter had left the stage. "Did you see how she recovered? Can you believe it? Wasn't she wonderful?" What I had noticed most, though, his eyes were as he blinked away the tears. And yet, one thing was clear. Warren's response was not the result of some innate love of ballet. Instead, he loved ballet because he loved his daughter and she loved ballet. This is how it works. It's the willingness to step into another's meaning. At times, this grows naturally from the relationship. At other times, such as with those we consider our enemies, it requires work. The key is listening. Listening with compassion and without judgment. Such a strong love as this is always needed, of course. But right now, in this badly divided country of ours, I can't think of anything that is needed more desperately. Amen.